Vivian Vance and William Frawley charmed millions as the beloved neighbors Fred and Ethel Mertz on I Love Lucy from 1951 to 1957. Yet behind their on-screen chemistry, Vance loathed Frawley, and their relationship became one of Hollywood's most notorious feuds. What went down behind the scenes is a story Hollywood tried to brush under the rug for years. Once you find out what Frawley did, you'll see exactly why Vivian could never forgive him. Don't skip ahead just yet, because we're going way deeper than the usual drama here. You do not want to miss this. Lucille Ball was setting up her brand new show, I Love Lucy, which we now know became a TV phenomenon. But at the time, nobody knew that. They were just trying to put the puzzle pieces together, one by one. Lucy had a strong vision and her first choice for Ethel Mertz was the talented Bea Benaderet. But Bea was unavailable, so Lucy considered Mary Wickes, a good friend, who declined to avoid any potential awkwardness between them. Meanwhile, Desi Arnaz, Lucy's husband, played a major role behind the scenes, pushing hard to get the casting just right. While the show would become a classic, tensions simmered from the start. Vivian Vance couldn't stand William Frawley. And it wasn't just petty bickering, it was deep-rooted hatred. The real question is, why? What happened between these two actors who played a lovable couple but couldn't even be in the same room off-camera? Lucy once worked with James Gleason on a film and thought he'd be perfect for Fred Mertz, but his $3,500 per episode salary demand was too much. So, William Frawley, then 64 and a vaudeville legend with nearly 100 film credits, took the initiative and called Lucy himself. CBS didn't want him due to his reputation as a heavy drinker, but Desi fought for him and made Frawley sign a contract that said if he showed up drunk, he was out, and Frawley agreed. The tension between Vivian and Frawley started largely due to a 22-year age gap. He was 64, she was 42, and Vivian was bothered by having to play the wife of a man who looked like her grandfather. At first, things were civil, but over time she became vocal about how mismatched they were. She once said during rehearsals, "Nobody will believe I'm married to that old goat." And Frawley heard her. The producers made things worse by dressing Vivian in unflattering clothes to make her look plain next to Lucy. While Lucy played a glamorous wife to Desi, Vivian felt stuck playing a frumpy sidekick. She felt overlooked, miscast, and typecast. The audience noticed too, with some calling Fred and Ethel's marriage a miserable, sexless relationship. Vivian refused to kiss Frawley on camera, mastering the art of the air kiss. In one episode, Equal Rights, they were supposed to kiss in a jail cell. Watch closely and you'll see nothing but cold body language and an eye roll. Frawley, for his part, retaliated with pettiness, encouraging writers to mock Ethel's appearance with lines like her figure looking like a sack full of doorknobs. Ironically, their real-life animosity added authenticity to their scenes and made their arguments hilariously real. But the emotional toll on Vivian was real. Playing a role she despised, with a man she couldn't stand, affected her deeply. CBS once offered them a Mertz's spin-off with a $50,000 bonus, and Vivian refused. She couldn't spend another minute with Frawley without Lucy and Desi as buffers. Behind the laughs was a painful reality of career sacrifices and emotional strain. That 22-year age gap wasn't just about numbers, it symbolized missed opportunities and a professional burden Vivian carried for years. We all loved watching Fred and Ethel bicker, but the tension wasn't just acting. Vivian Vance loathed William Frawley, and for years, no one truly knew why. The gossip swirled, but the truth stayed buried, until now. Their feud started with awkward silence and spiraled into one of classic TV's most infamous clashes. Instead of forming a bond, they side-eyed each other, traded passive-aggressive jabs, and counted down the minutes until filming was over. When Vivian commented she didn't want to be paired with that old man, Frawley took it personally. From that moment, it was war. Greg Oppenheimer, son of the show's producer, said Frawley took it to heart. Frawley had a nasty reputation, rough, rude, and particularly unkind to women. Co-author Audrey Kupferberg called him a woman hater, and with his drinking problem and temper, it's no surprise he and Vivian clashed. He even used crude language to describe her in an interview, including the C word. Their feud was an open secret in Hollywood. Everyone knew. Yet, despite it all, they managed to remain weirdly professional on set. They showed up, delivered their lines, and didn't let the hatred affect the production, but you could feel it in the air, you know? Every scene between Fred and Ethel had this underlying tension that wasn't acting, it was real, raw annoyance dressed up as comedy. That's what made their scenes so electric. Have you ever watched a couple fight on screen and thought, dang, this feels a little too real? That was Fred and Ethel. Frawley loved tossing in off-script digs about Ethel's looks or her annoying habits, and Vance, who was no pushover, clapped back with lines like "OL Fat Freddy." These lines weren't always in the script, they came from a place of genuine dislike. It was petty. It was personal. But it worked on screen. Some TV historians actually believe that this hatred, this deep, almost comical resentment, might have made the show even better. Their constant bickering felt so authentic because it was. The lack of affection between their characters wasn't just a result of 1950s TV decorum, it was a direct reflection of how much they couldn't stand being in the same room. And yet, it created magic. Go figure, right? But let's not pretend they were ever going to bury the hatchet. After I Love Lucy ended, CBS tried to spin off Fred and Ethel into their own show. William Frawley was all in, probably thinking of the paycheck, but Vivian Vance? She shut it down immediately, refusing to ever work with him again. And that was that. No reunion, no fake smiles for the cameras, just a firm absolutely not from Vance. Honestly, who can blame her? This wasn't your typical TV feud, this was full-blown animosity that lasted years, spanned 6 whole seasons, and still gets talked about today. It's the kind of feud that leaves scorch marks on Hollywood history. Ironic, isn't it? The couple who made America laugh every week, the couple whose chemistry helped turn I Love Lucy into a classic, couldn't even share a dressing room without rolling their eyes. And yet, they stayed the course, put in the work, and in the middle of all that tension and bitterness, gave us some of the most iconic TV moments of all time. Funny how the most toxic work relationships can sometimes lead to the best art. Maybe that's just the strange alchemy of showbiz, where love and hate blur, and even the worst pairings somehow light up the screen. It's 1957, and I Love Lucy is winding down after changing the television game. It wasn't just a show, it was the show. It had heart, comedy, chaos, and just enough drama to keep people hooked. While most were tuned in for Lucy's antics and Ricky's charm, there was something special about that other couple, Fred and Ethel Mertz. That grumpy old landlord and his sassy wife were hilarious in their own right, always bickering but somehow still adorable. So, imagine the excitement when CBS and Desilu Studios floated the idea, what if Fred and Ethel had their own spin-off show? This wasn't just a random suggestion, it was a real, fully backed plan. CBS and Desilu, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz's powerhouse company, were both behind it. Desi himself pitched it to Frawley and Vance, excitedly suggesting Fred and Ethel finally get the spotlight. The idea had serious potential. Fans loved the Mertzes, their love-hate relationship added humor and charm to I Love Lucy. They were the relatable neighbors who argued over the silliest things but still had each other's backs. The producers had tons of ideas. Maybe Fred and Ethel would move to Los Angeles or Albuquerque, maybe they'd run into old friends like Carolyn and Charlie Appleby, maybe they'd get new neighbors to squabble with. The possibilities were endless. William Frawley, who played Fred, was completely on board. For him, this was more than just a creative opportunity, it was survival. A chance at steady, long-term work in a brutal industry that didn't treat aging actors kindly. He was practical, already in his 70s and familiar with the ups and downs of vaudeville and film. He saw the value in staying relevant on TV. But then it all fell apart. Vivian Vance, beloved Ethel, flat out refused. Not a maybe or let me think about it, but a hard no. She didn't just close the door, she locked it, tossed the key, and burned the house down. And they offered her a lot of money, serious, life-changing money. But Vivian didn't flinch. Why? First, she couldn't stand William Frawley. We're talking years of bottled-up tension, passive-aggressive jabs, and pure dislike. She tolerated him on I Love Lucy likely because Lucy and Ricky were buffers. The thought of working with him one-on-one every week? That was a hard pass. Second, she didn't believe the Mertzes could carry a show on their own. She was smart enough to recognize that the magic of I Love Lucy was in the dynamic of all four characters. Fred and Ethel were hilarious within Lucy and Ricky's world, but as leads? She wasn't convinced. She wanted to grow beyond the sidekick role she'd played for years. Playwright Kim Powers even noted how Vance started questioning whether she'd always be just the sidekick. That kind of self-doubt isn't about ego, it's about the desire to grow and escape the box the industry keeps shoving you into. The fallout was brutal. Frawley was furious. To him, Vance wasn't just turning down a show, she was rejecting his chance at financial stability and relevance. Their already shaky relationship went up in flames. It could have been a piece of TV history. Some even say Fred and Ethel were like the Ropers of the 50s, referring to that other famous landlord couple from Three's Company who had their own successful spin-off. But because of a long-simmering feud, that opportunity never saw the light of day. So yeah, it wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was one of the biggest what could have been moments in TV history. Makes you wonder how many great things never happened because people couldn't move past their personal beefs. In the end, we'll never know what a Fred and Ethel show might have looked like. Maybe it would have flopped. Or maybe it could have been another classic. But we do know that behind the laughter and the black and white smiles, real-life tension shaped the course of TV history. Vivian Vance and William Frawley couldn't stand each other, not just a little tension, but deep-seated bitterness that lasted for years. And when Frawley passed away, the world waited for Vance's reaction. William Frawley died on March 3, 1966, and while most would expect a respectful, if distant, farewell, Vance shocked everyone. She was at a restaurant when someone informed her of his passing. Instead of a solemn nod or quiet word, she raised her glass and shouted, "Champagne for everybody." It wasn't whispered in private, it was loud, public, and became Hollywood legend overnight. But before calling her heartless, understand what led to that moment. This wasn't about one bad day. It was years of enduring Frawley's drinking, cruel remarks, and exhausting behavior. Time may heal many wounds, but in this case, not all. That single outburst of celebration was the final, bitter punctuation on one of television's most legendary feuds. Not for Vivian. If anything, the wound just got deeper the longer they were tied together by their characters. And here's what really makes it wild, the show had been off the air for almost 10 years by the time he died. 10 years. You'd think maybe some of the sting would have faded. That maybe, just maybe, distance and time would have softened things up. But nah. That man lived rent-free in her head for a whole decade after they stopped working together. And it wasn't with fondness, let me tell you that. Her reaction was so immediate, so sharp, that you could tell the mere mention of his name still triggered something in her. That pain? Still fresh. That bitterness? Still simmering just under the surface, ready to bubble over, and it did. And let's not forget, they were iconic together. Fred and Ethel Mertz were America's favorite landlords. They had this bickering but lovable energy that people ate up. Viewers thought their on-screen spats were just good comedy. But behind the scenes? It was as real as it gets. That tension wasn't acting, it was two people barely tolerating each other and hiding it behind perfect comic timing. Isn't that kinda crazy to think about? That one of TV's most beloved duos couldn't even look each other in the eye off camera? It really makes you wonder, how much does someone have to push your buttons, day in and day out, for their death to make you want to celebrate? And what kind of person keeps that level of anger so alive for so long? Vance clearly never got the closure she needed. There was no "hey, bygones be bygones" moment, no mellowing with age. Just pure, undiluted resentment. Her infamous champagne toast wasn't just a petty jab, it was the final word in a battle she never wanted to fight but was forced into by circumstance. Like, imagine being professionally shackled to someone who drains the joy out of your day, every day, for 15 years. That's not just work stress. That's emotional warfare. And what's even sadder? They never reconciled. Not even a hint of it. There's something really tragic about that when you think about it. Two people who shared such a historic part of television, who made so many people laugh and feel good, were privately so miserable. And in the end, all the audience saw was the magic, never the storm behind the scenes. But that one off-the-cuff champagne for everybody line pulled back the curtain in the bluntest way possible. It wasn't just a quip. It was a lifetime of frustration being released in 5 words. So yes, William Frawley's death might have been quiet, but the aftermath? Not so much. Vivian Vance's response told the whole world, without a shred of sugarcoating, that she was done carrying the weight of that grudge. She set it down, popped the cork, and let it go in the only way she knew how. And honestly, it was the most brutally honest goodbye Hollywood had ever seen. With this, we have come to the end of this video.